the edge of the known world. Across the vast Atlantic Ocean, a group of English settlers sailed toward a mysterious land that few Europeans had ever seen. Their destination was a small island along the coast of North America, a place called Roanoke. More than 100 men, women, and children came with a dream to build the first permanent English colony in the New World. Leading them was the governor of the colony, John White. But within only a few years, every single one of those settlers would disappear, leaving behind one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. In the late 1500s, England wanted power in the New World. Spain already controlled vast territories across the Americas. England needed its own colonies. Roanoke Island seemed like the perfect place. It had forests, fertile land, and access to the sea. In 1587, the colonists arrived. They quickly began building homes. Wooden houses rose among the trees. Fields were cleared. Gardens were planted. For a brief moment, the colony seemed full of promise. But life in the New World was harsh. Food was scarce. Supplies were limited, and tensions with nearby Native American tribes grew. The colonists needed help. So Governor John White made a difficult decision. He would sail back to England to gather supplies. He promised the settlers he would return quickly, but fate had other plans. Soon after he arrived in England, war erupted. The Anglo-Spanish War had begun. England feared invasion by the powerful Spanish Armada. All ships were ordered to stay and defend the country. Months turned into years. John White was trapped in England, unable to return to his colony. 3 long years passed. Finally, in 1590, he was able to sail back across the Atlantic. After weeks at sea, his ship finally reached the shores of Roanoke Island. But something felt wrong. The settlement was silent. No smoke rose from the chimneys. No voices echoed through the village. John White stepped onto the island. What'd he disc? But the mystery of Roanoke did not end with Governor John White. In fact, the real investigation had only just begun. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and explorers have tried to answer one haunting question. What really happened to the lost settlers? One of the most widely accepted theories suggests that the colonists did not die at all. Instead, they survived. Some historians believe the settlers may have joined a nearby Native American tribe, the CROATOAN people. The CROATOAN tribe lived on an island south of Roanoke, known today as Hatteras Island. This island was only about 50 miles away. If the settlers had run out of food, moving there would have been a logical decision. In fact, Governor John White himself believed this was the most likely explanation. The carved word CROATOAN might have been a message, a clue left behind for him, a sign that the colony had simply relocated. Years later, English explorers reported something strange. They encountered Native Americans with gray eyes. Some even claimed that these tribes used English words. Could these have been descendants of the Roanoke colonists? It's possible, but the evidence remains uncertain. Another theory is far darker. Some historians believe the colonists were attacked. At the time, relations between European settlers and Native American tribes were often tense and violent. One powerful tribal leader, named Chief Powhatan, ruled much of the region. Later English colonists claimed that Chief Powhatan may have attacked and destroyed the Roanoke settlement. However, this claim is still debated. There is very little direct evidence. No mass graves have ever been discovered, and no clear signs of battle were found at the site. A third theory suggests that the settlers tried to travel inland. Life on Roanoke Island was extremely difficult. Food shortages were common. The soil was poor, and the colonists had limited farming experience in the unfamiliar environment. Some researchers believe the set. For more than 4 centuries, one mystery has continued to haunt American history. A colony of over 100 people, men, women, and children, simply disappeared. No bodies, no ruins, no clear explanation. Only a single carved word left behind. The story of the Lost Colony of Roanoke is not just a historical puzzle. It is a story about survival, fear, and the unknown world that early explorers faced. In the late 1500s, England was racing to expand its power across the globe. Spain already dominated much of the Americas. Its ships carried gold and silver across the Atlantic, making Spain the most powerful empire in Europe. England wanted its share of the New World. So explorers began searching for locations where colonies could be established. One of those locations was Roanoke Island. It was surrounded by forests, rivers, and the vast Atlantic Ocean. To English explorers, it seemed like a promising gateway into the new continent. In 1587, a group of settlers arrived to build a permanent colony. Among them were families hoping for a new beginning. One of the most important figures among the colonists was John White. Not only was he the governor of the colony, but he was also an artist and mapmaker. White carefully documented the land, the wildlife, and the people who lived there. His drawings remain some of the earliest records of Native American life in North America. But building a colony in an unfamiliar land was far more difficult than anyone expected. The settlers quickly faced serious challenges. Food supplies began to run low. The unfamiliar climate made farming difficult, and relations with nearby tribes were uncertain. Despite these difficulties, the colonists tried to build a community. Homes were constructed, fields were cleared, and gardens were planted. But survival depended on one critical thing: supplies from England. When food shortages became severe, Governor John White returned to England to gather help. He promised the settlers he would return Q. The Lost Colony of Roanoke, a different perspective. Long before modern cities covered North America, the eastern coastline was a wild and mysterious frontier. Dense forests stretched for miles. Unknown rivers carved their paths through untouched land. And beyond the horizon of the Atlantic Ocean, European explorers dreamed of building new worlds. In the late 16th century, England was determined to become a global power. Across the ocean, Spain had already established wealthy colonies and controlled vast territories throughout the Americas. English leaders feared being left behind in this race for land, wealth, and influence. So they began sending expeditions across the Atlantic to establish their own settlements. One of the most ambitious attempts was made on a remote island along the coast of present-day North Carolina. That place was Roanoke Island. The island seemed promising to early explorers. It offered access to fresh water, forests for building materials, and a strategic location near the mainland. In 1587, a group of English settlers arrived there with the goal of creating a permanent community. Unlike earlier expeditions, this group was made up not only of soldiers and explorers, but also ordinary families. Men and women came with hopes of farmland and opportunity. Children arrived with dreams of growing up in a new world. Among the settlers was the colony's governor, John White. White was not just a leader. He was also an observer of the natural world. Through sketches and maps, he documented the landscape and the people living in the region. His illustrations would later become some of the earliest visual records of Native American cultures along the Atlantic coast. But turning a distant island into a thriving settlement was far more difficult